the good effects, and some findings on our studies. As you are aware, our dietary habits have changed radically in the last 15 years, having a harmful effect on our health. This is so because our diet is getting more rich in saturated fat, cholesterol, and refined sugars. Perhaps consequent to it, atherosclerotic related disease like ischemic heart disease, diabetes, hypertension, stroke, and other diseases like cancer and many more, they are on rise. Good point is improved nutrition or the better nutrition or dietary practices may improve outcome. Fortunately, we have got a better interest, and this conference is a testimony of that one. Though the conference is on the fasting, I'll be serving my talk in the following menu, 7-course menu of define and introducing. Then I'll be touching to you on the physiology of the fasting, its benefit and cautions, a brief about our study and the findings, certain other dietary practices, concluding, and the pudding will be your question and answer session. Let's begin. As we know, food is an important aspect of existence for all plants, animals, or human beings. But it is most misused, particularly in the human being. There are several reasons to deny food and or water. We'll be talking to that one. But three important and interrelated terms. Fasting is voluntarily, not eating for food for a varying length of time, being it for religious or health or as a protest. Well, dieting is just a limiting of food to lose weight or to be healthy. In contrast, starving is not availability of the food, either in famine or extreme poverty and many other situations. If I begin with the question, do we really need or consider fasting as we are doing today? Well, all animals do fast during severe illness or stress. This is nothing new. But humans have got the additional problems of overeating, indiscriminate eating. In fact, we are slave of the taste, swad. And because of this poverty in the plenty, we are suffering from the overweight and the faulty nutrition. And there are various reasons for that one. But all of us wish to have a better physical and mental health. However, many have been recommended, but the scientific studies are not many, and they need to be considered in a much more detail. I just begin with my perception of food or fasting in childhood. It was the food was is a part of the affection, dissent, displeasure, or protest. If I want to deny somebody my pleasure, I will remove the food from the menu. Second, there was a low regard for the low caloric food and the salads. Aversion to healthy and homemade food was more common, and that is still more common now. And we wish to have celebration at a restaurant style. And we have to have a celebration like eating. That's the main craving. But also the food was given to us as a punishment. Denial of the food, what I mean. Denial of the food was given to us as a punishment. So we had an aversion to the fasting at the childhood. Gradually we picked up, though it's not so. I begin with the purpose of fasting, health, that is a caloric restriction. I'll be talking to this in little more detail. And two other reasons, common reasons are spiritual, where more time is given for the spiritual activity, unifying because the people community come together and do the fasting, empathy for each another, and the famous protest by the Mahatma Gandhi. And now we are seeing every day in our life the fasting as a protest to have the demands met, though we have seen in childhood also. A small slide showing us the differences between the health related caloric restrictions, and the religious fasting. The primary aim, as the name suggests, is the health. Whereas religious fasting, the primary aim is spiritual. But look into this one, compulsion and discomfort. They are more with the health related caloric restrictions and they are less in the religious fasting. The preparations are made more elaborate in the religious fasting, but not in the health related fasting. Taking to the historical perspective, it was known to human being in the prehistoric period, and almost all religion they are recommending fasting as one of the means to improve the physical and mental health. Hippocrates has recommended this as one of the therapy in the medicine. The real scientific studies started in the 1900s when the physical benefits of the caloric restrictions were started recognizing. But the science of caloric restriction or the CR is credited to the McGee et al. In 1935, where they demonstrated that restricting the diet may increase the longevity in the rats. Across the world, the most commonly studied fasting is the Ramadan fasting, which is a form of the intermittent fasting. What fasting basically is with this clock, the fasting period and the eating period. Depending upon how much is these two related, but the basic aim of the fasting is to shrink the eating window and expand the fasting window. And there are various forms of the fasting. Continuous, that is absolute or dry, means nothing is taken. And second is water only fast. Western people now do put tea or coffee or the non-caloric drinks as in water instead of the water as. And the duration for the continuous fast is if it is more than 24 hours. Intermittent fasting is also a form of the continuous fasting. It can be done on alternate day or two consecutive days a week, that is 5 days to the 2, or it can be once a week, depending upon. But what intermittent or the related term or the more easily done is the time restricted fasting. I'll be talking this in little detail, both of them. And the time restriction of the feeding will be limited to the 1 to 8 hours. In the most popular is the 16-8, 16 hours fasting window, and 8 hours is the eating window. Another are 24, 23, 1, or 1 meal a day. Another is the caloric restriction, where the eating window is not restricted, but the total calories is restricted by 20 to 40%. Coming to the second point, perhaps you as a physiologist are more aware of this one. And in fact, I have learned all this from the Department of Physiology only. What basically, body has got an intelligent design to obviate the effect of fasting on the health. It burns stored energy. Even a thin person can survive for more than 40 days without food. That's a very beautiful. So what we are seeing is that the food is not an essential for the 15 to 20 days. It can be managed, and what are the benefits will be coming to. What important is that the weight loss, which is the main concern in the modern society, is approximately 1.5 to 4 kg, but it is more in the obese people. Important point, in the first few days, the weight loss is more because of the diminished fluid intake and not because of the calorie burnt. What important is that the brain is an important aspect of looking into the or taking into the food. Important point again is that the brain has got the three important one. One is the satiety or the gastric signals. The second is the visual signals, and third is the taste buds. These three, they work together to initiate an intake of food. Once the enough food comes in the body or in the stomach, distension of the stomach gives a signal of the satiety. But again, your mind that acts in a different way. The taste or the ras or the swad, it takes over the satiety signals. Important is that when we feel hunger, it is not only it's basically not physiological, it is psychological hunger. As we said, the more people can survive for more than 15 to 40 days. These are the phases. One is the gastric phase, second is the hepatic or the muscle phase, where carbohydrates are burned, then the fat is burned, and ultimately the proteins are burned to gain the energy source. But what important point is, this whole design of the nature is to preserve the vital organs. It has been seen that even in the extreme degree of the fast, brain and eye do not suffer much, except they shrink in the size, perhaps because of the loss of water, but not because of their cellular structures. So this is the one important point. Initially here at the first phase, the food which is present in already in the intestine or the stomach is digested. Food, amino acids, fat which are there, they are digested. After few hours, it is the liver and the muscle glycogen source that comes into the play. But later on, it is the fat. After 10 to 12 hours, the fat comes into the body. And at 2 o'clock, at 2 hours, 2 days, sorry, my miss. After 2 days, the ketone bodies do appear in the urine, and they are the source of the energy to the brain and to all the vital organs. Amino acid breaks in the last, and this is the slide which I will try to skip, as you are more aware of this one and you are the teacher for my knowledge in this one. But what important point is that the liver and brain analyzes or uses ketone bodies at this stage. That's why the people are more after they are silent or they are drowsy during the after 2 days of the fast, because ketone body comes into the production. Fasting breaks the hard work to the digestion, because the digestion is also an energy consuming pathway. And digestive organ is the largest and the bulkiest in the body. What important is the fasting brings a improvement in the gut health. The resident bacteria which are colonized in our gut, they are restored, leading to better metabolism, better host immunity, and diversity in the bacterial colony. So host immunity and the host metabolism in the gut definitely improves with the fasting. Other important effects of the fasting may not be relevant to the improvement in the body. Renal urine output, because of the less of the urine fluid intake, slight increase in the blood urea nitrogen, gastric secretions, because the satiety or the secretion or the hunger is not there, so the gastric secretions also come down, and the appetite also is go down because of the ketosis and the increased beta endorphins. Cardiac functions do not suffer much in the as there is a little change in the heart rate and the BP. Important point is the hormones, they show a good change. Insulin, we'll be talking little later, and thyroid. And the stress hormones, they go up. The main important finding, or which is attracting to the people, is the epigenetic changes in the people who do the fasting. Perhaps the genes which regulate our aging, they gets improved with the fasting. Most quoted in the scientific science of the fasting is the Nobel Prize winner Oshomi, who was given the Nobel Prize in 2016 in the physiology. He proposed that with more than 7 days fast, non-body proteins like bacteria, viruses, degenerative tissues which are there in our body, they are degraded and they are used as a fuel. Thus, the fasting provides an opportunity to the body to use the non-body protein or the non-required organisms or the non-required tissues. And the aim of this autophagy is to protect vital organs and muscle from damage. It is also thought that it cleanses the body of the cancerous cells and the toxins. Even many people have tried this as a therapy for the cancer. There are anecdotal reports also that many cancers have improved after doing the long fastings. Now, to sum up the benefits, decrease in the body weight, blood pressure, pulse, lipid profile, and cardiac parameters to the small extent. But what important point is that the insulin sensitivity is increased. That is the main point, which is the main culprit in the diabetes mellitus, and level of the insulin also gets down. There is a decrease in the oxidative stress, risk of the non-communicable disease. As I pointed you out, the telomere length, which gets shortened is the aging, also gets better, reversed, or improved. There is increased learning. There is increased learning and giving to the increased cognitive decline. Autophagy I already discussed. What important? Can I have the silence, please? Can I have the silence, please? The mental health also shows better with the fasting. We have demonstrated in one of our studies that anxiety, depression, and the mental health also shows improvement. There is a experimental evidence that the parasympathetic predominance occurs and the sympathetic release decreases with the fasting. But everything is not so simple in the fasting. Fasting has to be done with the caution in too young, less than 15 years, or the too old, more than 70 years. It is more problematic or difficult for the people who are continuously on the refined diet, who are manual laborer, or who are under great stress. It should be done with the caution in pregnant or the lactating mothers, people with the diabetes, particularly the type 1, chronic renal failure or the renal transplant patients, severe cardiac or the pulmonary conditions, fresh GI bleed or acute ulcers, people with the epilepsy and migraine, and many people with the multiple medicines where dosage adjustment will be needed. Fasting has to be done under medical supervision. There are few side effects. Not everything is rosy with the fasting. There can be sudden hypotension, fatigue, malaise, appetite loss, or the difficulty in breathing, insomnia, liver or kidney problems, pre-existing persistent feeling of the cold, rapid, weak and thready pulse, acute anxiety or emotional distress. People do have the either panic attack or the psychosis. So they have to be washed up. Before I go further, I'll be just talking to you on a small study which we did on the metabolic parameters consequent to the fasting on human health. They were total 98 subjects. This is a continuous fast, 3 to 4 days, either at 8 to 10 days, or few did at more than 11 days, and maximum was 30 days. And these are so our maximum was the 3 to 4 days. And intervention was water only, and that too limited to the daytime, not in the night time. So the water only fast was this one. Parameters were done at the beginning of the study and at the close of the study, means at the close of the fast, last day of the fast. And they were height, weight, BMI, pulse, BP, hemoglobin, sugar, blood urea, nitrogen, creatinine, lipid profiles, protein, AG, and cortisol. I'll be giving you the salient observations of our study. Body weight. As you see, people with a 3 to 4 days fast, there was a reduction in the small reduction in the body weight and the BMI, but it was little more significant when people were fasting for the 8 to 10 days. But it gets stabilized again when the fast goes beyond the 11 days. So these are the maximum fasting, but once they continue the fasting, the weight again gets stabilized. Pulse and BP didn't show, there was slight reduction in the systolic and diastolic, but no significant change in the pulse. Sugar in the 3 to 4 days fast initially did show high from the 100 to 140 it went up to, but gets stabilized at the or little better at the 8 to 10 days. And people who fasted for a longer period, blood sugar did go down. Perhaps the requirement of the body, they were perhaps continuing their job or they were continuing to require their calories, but here the requirement of calories was less. That's why the production of the sugar was less. Lipids, the triglyceride and the total cholesterol did go up, perhaps as a source of energy. But with the longer duration of the fast, the triglycerides and the cholesterol also did came down. Important is HDL continued to decline. Continued to decline in the HDL cholesterol ratio, not the HDL. HDL cholesterol ratio continued to decline, showing that the HDL was much more and the LDL was less in this period. Cortisol was one of the important component of our study. The serum cortisol did so increase in the fast up to the 10 days. Perhaps this is stress related. And with the longer duration of the fast, where people were stabilized on the fasting, there was a decline. Now, to sum up the metabolic effect of the fasting from our study and those which is reported in the literature, there is a decrease in the glucose, which may be slight decrease or increase as we saw in our study, normal by 20 days, and maybe slight decrease later on. But the important point which we haven't done was the increase in insulin sensitivity. That was the much more important. And the sympathetic activity and the liver cyclic AMP increased during the initial phases and later on it decreased. Similarly, lipid metabolism. The cholesterol and the triglyceride did rise initially, then returned to the pre-fast level. Beneficial effect was the high density lipids were better improved than the LDL, which really got reduced. So the lesson learned from our study, though it was a preliminary study, and it's possible to do advanced studies with the better controls and the better bindings. We have also seen that the subjects were very eager and inquisitive about their health benefits. The religious and the social leaders can influence the studies because to get the blood from a fasting people is one of the difficult tasks. Researchers also need high motivation and dedications, and no pharma will come forward to support us. But the scope is big as the ignorance is prevalent in both public and in scientific community. Our biggest limitation of the study was that we haven't done the post-fast state or whether there was a refeeding syndrome or not. A small word before I close, a few 2-3 slides. Circadian rhythm is perhaps the most misused in our life pattern now. We all know and we are very well aware scientifically that the food digested better in the morning, little less in the afternoon, and very less in the evening, whereas we are doing just the reverse. And 3 meals a day perhaps is an innovation of the modern day. It's not there in the animal kingdom. Another is indiscriminate or constant eating against the circadian rhythm is that the insulin level and the glucagon goes up. Body gets desensitization, means more resistant to the insulin and the glucagon, and they stop recognizing them. But the circadian disruption is the prime animals to the obesity, including the human being. Other dietary practices which should be done with the fasting are avoid night meals, be vegetarian, my personal, but not a continuous recommendation. Caloric restriction is one of the important point. Time restricted eating, perhaps when the subject was introduced today, they were meaning the time restricted feeding and not the intermittent feeding or one meal a day. Restriction of the sweets, refined sugars, or the juices. Ras paritya means favorite food, and the vritti means limiting number of foods item per day and not the 20 course items or the 40 course dinner. No, not. As my listeners are, many of them are new, young, coming up. So I will just tell you a few research potentials. Either you can have a literature review or you can go for the experimental studies. We have to develop a fasting as a model of total health. And we must learn from the pattern of feeding in animals and in the human during evolution. From the initial human to the now, or in the apes also, we have to learn what was the feeding pattern and we must try to mimic that. Experimental studies are also plenty. Physiological changes with the fasting and delineating anatomical, biochemical, and hormonal pathways. Beneficial effect on the physical, mental health, cognition, and disease. Then long-term sequels of the fasting, and what happens if you undo the fasting or if you undo your efforts after closure of the fast. To conclude, fasting is a pious process and one must maintain it. It's a famous quote, exercise is the king and diet is the queen. Eating to synchronize with the circadian rhythm is the key. Planning and follow-up are equally important. Not that you do the fasting and do tomorrow and no preparation today. That's not correct. And another thing is you do the fast today and not only end up tomorrow, but you overeat on the next day. That's not correct. So avoid repeating syndrome. But we are now very sure scientifically fasting is a proven way to enhance physical, psychological, and spiritual health. Last important point, it should be a lifestyle pattern and not a sporadic event of the fasting. Thank you for the patience listening.
Thank you so much, sir. If you have any questions, please unmute yourself and feel free to ask, sir. You can also put it on the chat box.
I'll stop sharing.
Okay. Yes, sir. Any of the participants, if you have any questions, please unmute yourself and ask, sir.
Good morning, sir. Sir,
Yes, please.
Sir, this is Dr. Vinay from SBMC, sir. Sir, your presentation was excellent.
Yes.
We understood many things, sir. Sir, I have one query that you suggested for vegetarian food. So, is it includes the milk and milk products, or we should exclude the milk and milk products also?
Yeah, meat, egg, then comes to the vegetarian, and then come the vegan. Now, these are personal choices. I will not like to comment on that.
No, sir. I'm just asking that if we are following a vegetarian diet, that means we should even vegetarian diet includes the milk and milk products or without milk and milk products?
Yeah, vegetarian includes both everything other than the animal meat or the eggs. But vegan are the one which do not include dairy products.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
But this is a personal choice.
Okay.
Excuse me, sir. Good morning, sir.
Yes, please.
So this is Dr. Jagvinder from PIMS Jalandhar.
Yeah.
Sir, my query is, you said that migraine people should be careful while doing intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
Sir, which can be the better way if continuous fasting is not possible because starving may precipitate headache in them?
Yeah.
So can they go for other ways, time restricted fasting?
Yeah. It's a, you see, we must dissociate fasting with the spiritual and the physical benefits. Now, talking to about the physical benefits, basic element is the diet caloric restrictions. In whichever way, whether you do with the continuous fasting, or you do with the intermittent fasting, or you do with the caloric restrictions. So, caloric restrictions is equally effective. In fact, scientific studies have shown that the time restricted feeding and the caloric restrictions have got almost equal benefit with the intermittent fasting.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
Excuse me, sir, one small doubt, sir.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I'm Dr. Dhanashree Naidu from Hyderabad.
Yes.
Sir, fasting is beneficial for hypotensive patients or hypertensive patients? And what are the complications? More is there in hypo or hyper?
It will more in the hypo.
Yes, sir. So, in what way we can shift, sir? Suppose my sister is she's also a doctor, but she's hypotension. I'm hypertension. So, in what way we can adjust fasting?
Yeah. For the hypotension, I suggest they should have the good fluid intake prior to initiate the fast, and they should continue to have the good fluid intake, possibly with the salt.
Salt. Okay. Hyper is without salt.
Hyper is the normal fasting.
Normal. That is okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. I'm happy now because it is my personal problem. I have to ask the question, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, please.
Good morning, sir. Myself, I'm Dr. Divyashree. I'm from HIMS Hassan. Sir, my question is, sir, when autophagy starts after 7 days, is it with intermittent fasting or continuous fasting, sir?
It will be more with the continuous fasting. More, okay. But it will be there with the both the one.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
See, it's basically the body will take care of the degraded products only when outside calorie is not much. Basic is that one. Whether you do with the continuous or with the caloric restriction.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, can you little highlight more with the autophagia and cancer, how they get related? Because cancerous patient itself, like they have sort of, less immunity and
You see a cancerous cell is also which is a metabolic active cells. So once you restrict the calories, the body uses the cancerous cells as a source of nutrition or as a source of calories. That's the what basically. I have got a few people who said that they have improved their malignancy with the fasting, but they are anecdotal reports, not the large scale reports. I hope I have cleared it.
Still, I have a doubt, sir. Like, how can exactly, play a role? Is there any proper pathway which can help them?
Yeah, it's like once you do the calorie restrictions, first will be the undesirable cells, viruses, bacteria, they are digested. But once that digestion is over, it is your own tissue will start getting digested. That's a normal way. In the fasting, we do that our muscle cells, our liver cells, they do get digested. And in the long term, the protein, amino acids and the proteins also get digested in the body. So the cellular digestion is not a new one, but it is the malignant cells which will be digested first because they are highly metabolic activity.
Yes. Okay. Fine. Thank you.
Okay.
Sir, I have a small doubt.
Yes.
I'm Dr. Prabhakar, I'm professor of medicine.
Yes, please.
The talk was excellent. Actually, I have a small doubt regarding the once we fast, the cortisol levels will increase, and the hypercortisolism will also will aid in some sort of obesity. As most of we have seen a Cushing syndrome or the iatrogenic Cushing's. Usually these people will be obese. I know it is not because of fat per se; it's mainly because of water and salt retention, but it also has got something to do with the fat redistribution. And I've been seeing, especially the priests in the temples. I've seen them. Most of them they fast. I've seen them fasting on the regular basis, but still most of them are obese. This whenever I see these priests or especially the temples, so whenever I see them, most of them will have big bellies, and most of them will be doing the fasting on regular basis. But it is little for me. It is difficult to correlate how this fasting will cause. I was thinking that this fasting will cause the hypercortisolism, and that may have the effect on the fat redistribution and fat and obesity also. So, what is your opinion on this, sir?
Yeah, one is that cortisol, if you take it as a stress-related hormone. So during the first few days of the fast, let's say up to the 7 or 10 days, the cortisol will go up. But as we have shown also, but it was only in the 5 cases that the cortisol started getting down, or really it reduced in the 5 people who were fasted more than 10 days. So that is the one. Second, fasting and the obesity. Perhaps, cortisol and the obesity. It is not the hypercortisolism because that is in a disease condition, not in the normal physiological condition. The third point is the people who are doing religious fasting, perhaps they are more victim of the refeeding syndrome. That is, once they close the fasting, they take a lot of diet. And in fact, many things where they break the fast, there is a ritual. They break the fast with a ritual. And this ritual has got a high carbohydrate and high fat diet. Okay, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
So there's another question on chat box by Smita. She asks you, due to intermittent fasting, the loss of muscle mass will be there at all?
It will be there in the prolonged fast. The loss of muscle mass. Initial loss is the glycogen or the glucose. Second is the fat, and the muscle mass as a part of the glycogen store does come down in the initial stage. As a muscle mass, if you take glycogen of muscles in the glycogen in the muscles will come down first, and the later on the fat will come down, and in the last one it will be the proteins or the amino acids in the muscles. So this is there across the body. Only thing is that the brain and eye do not get suffer in this process. So the muscle do get wasted in the fasting, but initially due to the glycogen loss, second is due to the fat loss.
Thank you so much, sir, for your enlightening session. And now we'll have the inauguration.
Thank you very much once again for the listening.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Let's begin with the inauguration. Let's begin with the inauguration of National Virtual CME with the invocation song by Ms. Smita, PhD scholar, STUMC.
Shri Varalakshmi Namastubhyam. Shri Varalakshmi Namastubhyam. Vasuprade Shri Sarasapade Rasapade Sapade Pade Pade Shri Varalakshmi Namastubhyam. Vasuprade Shri Sarasapade Rasapade Sapade Pade Pade Shri Varalakshmi Namastubhyam. Bhavajajanaka Pranavallabhe Suvarnabhe Bhamukoti Samana Prabhe Bhakta Sulabhe Sevaka Janapalinne Shruta Pankaja Malinne Kevala Gunashalinne Keshavarkelinne Sevaka Janapalinne Shruta Pankaja Malinne Kevala Gunashalinne Keshavarkelinne Shri Varalakshmi Namastubhyam. Vasuprade Shri Sarasapade Rasapade Sapade Pade Pade Shri Varalakshmi Namastubhyam. Shravana Purnami Purvastra Shukravaro Charumati Prabhrati Pujita Kare Devadi Guru Guha Samarpita Manimaya Hare Dina Jana Samrakshana Nipuna Kanakadhare Bhavana Veda Chature Bharati Sannutavare Kaivalya Vitarana Pare Kanchita Phala Pradakare Shri Varalakshmi Namastubhyam. Vasuprade Shri Sarasapade Rasapade Sapade Pade Pade Shri Varalakshmi Namastubhyam.
Thank you so much, Smita. Such a beautiful song you sang. Now let's have a welcome address by Dr. Vinita Shankar ma'am, HOD, Professor and HOD of Department of Physiology, SDMC. Over to you, ma'am.
Good morning, everyone. I extend a warm welcome to one and all. Department of Physiology, Sri Devaraja's Medical College, affiliated to Sri Devaraja's Academy of Higher Education and Research, is conducting this national level CME on intermittent fasting in health and disease in association with Medical Education Research Trust, MERT Bangalore. We are honored to have Dr. B.M. Hegde, sir, Professor B.M. Hegde, who was enthused with the theme of this CME and readily consented to be our chief guest and has sent a message wishing the conference all the best. I welcome the eminent speakers of today's scientific event who will share their valuable insights in this field that they have gained by experience. Dr. Pratap Sancheti, neurologist, Jodhpur. Dr. Mohan Badgandi, consultant diabetic and endocrinologist, Manipal Hospitals. Dr. Venkat Narayan Joshi, Croydon Ayurveda Center, London. Dr. Achyutan Ishwaran, co-founder of nutritionscience.in, sampurnahara.com, who's a naturopathy consultant and plant-based practitioner and social entrepreneur in Bangalore. Dr. Shekhar Annambotla, Professor Emeritus, Jayoti Vidyapith, Women's University, Jaipur, and teaching faculty at University of Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, Nursing School, USA. I'm pleased to welcome our Chancellor, Sri Rajesh Jagadale, our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Dr. Pradeep Kumar, Registrar, Dr. KNV Prasad, Dean, Dr. Sri Ramalu, Medical Superintendent, Dr. Sheila, delegates who have registered from all over, from all disciplines, truly qualifying it to be an interdisciplinary program, and my colleagues who have assembled here. I hope you'll all enjoy this academic feast, which is spread over for this next 8 hours. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now we'll have a small talk by our chief guest, B.M. Hegde. Before that, let's have an introduction to Dr. B.M. Hegde by Dr. Usha Shinoy, SVMC.
Hello, good morning, everyone. It gives me an immense pleasure to introduce our chief guest, Sir B.M. Hegde, often abbreviated as B.M. Hegde. He is a cardiologist, professional educator, and author. He was the former Vice Chancellor of Manipal University, co-chairman of the TAG-VHS Diabetes Research Center, Chennai, the chairman of Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan, Mangalore. He has authored several books on medical practice and ethics. He is also the editor-in-chief of the medical journal, Journal of the Science of Healing Outcomes. He was awarded the Dr. B.C. Roy Award in 1999, and he was awarded India's third highest civilian award, the Padma Bhushan, in 2010. In the year 2021, he was awarded India's second highest civilian award, the Padma Vibhushan. This is a small message from Sir. I means illness and we means wellness. So now I would like to share a small message which is being sent by our Sir. This one. Share sound.
Want to eat sensibly, good food.
ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದೆಯಾ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದೆ
Want to eat sensibly, good food. In time, is the one who will keep his health always in good shape. Overeating is one of the very important cause of ill health. Fasting is a good method of giving the gastrointestinal tract a periodic respite. Time for it to recover, and work again. Intermittent fasting that way is an ideal method of fasting, because you don't have to fast a long time. I always tell my patients, don't eat anything after your lunch at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And next morning, by about 8 o'clock in the morning, you will have about 11 hours of fasting. And that will be a very good intermittent fasting method of keeping your health in good shape. So intermittent fasting is therefore a very good idea of keeping your health in good shape. And I'm happy that this conference is all about intermittent fasting. People might think fasting is bad. No, fasting is not bad at all. As a matter of fact, long-term fasting is not good. But fasting for a short while, is very good for health. Fasting is good for health. People have been, from time immemorial, advising fasting as a means of good health or even curing illnesses. Even the Indian system of medicine, Ayurveda, fasting is one of the methods of treatment. Intermittent fasting is a good idea because you keep on having fasting now and then in between good meals, and it's a good method of preserving your good health. I hope that this will become a routine in future also in management strategies of all kinds of illnesses. I wish. The conference on fasting intermittent.
That was a brief message by Dr. B.M. Hegde. We request all the participants to please mute your phones or the laptops. Please. Next, we have a message from our principal, honorary principal, Dr. Sriramulu, sir. Over to you, sir.
Very good morning, one and all. Warm greetings from the Devarajas Medical College, a constituent unit of the Devarajas Academy of Higher Education, Tamuka, Kolar. I welcome all the resource persons and delegates to this national CME conducted by the Department of Physiology on an interesting topic, intermittent fasting in the health and disease. The intermittent fasting has gained the more
Sir, please unmute your phones. Please unmute, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Warm welcome from the Devarajas Medical College, a constituent unit of Sri Devarajas Higher Education and Research, Tamuka, Kolar. I welcome all the dignitaries, resource persons, and delegates to this national CME conducted by the Department of Physiology on an interesting topic which gains more importance in present scenario, on intermittent fasting in health and disease. Intermittent fasting has gained more importance in recent decades owing to its vast benefits in keeping the human being fit and healthy. Contrary to the popular belief, intermittent fasting is not a type of diet, or it is a lifestyle choice which involves to alter the cycles of fasting and eating periods. When I was listening to Dr. Pratap's talk, he has highlighted or stressed more on the eating habits to synchronize with the circadian rhythm. Yes, it has to be synchronized with the circadian rhythm. At this junction, I would like to bring it to all your notice that Indian population is suffering from undernourishment, which is somewhere around 19 to 20%. Now it has come down to 14%, which is a totally different scenario. With our past experience, one example I would like to bring it to all your notice. Continuous fasting is not good for the health if it is more than 72 hours. But I thought sir has shown the statistics in his presentation. One example is Putti Sriramulu is the one who has did the fasting continuously for 47 days to get a separate state for Telugu speaking community, that is Andhra Pradesh. Ultimately, he has succumbed to the complications of that continuous fasting. But here, the intermittent fasting, changing the time interval between your food timings definitely benefits in present scenario health problems. Hundreds of experiments over the animals and few clinical trials on the human being have shown that intermittent fasting can lead to improvement in various diseases and overall improvement in the health condition. However, more research is needed to determine whether the intermittent fasting is yielding benefits or it even feasible for the humans when the practice for various duration of time. This national CME organized by the Department of Physiology, Sri Devaraja's Medical College, will enlighten the practice about the different regimen, the key mechanism, and various benefits of the intermittent fasting. The end, I can assure you all of you will go home with the good inputs from this national CME, and we ensure you that the academic feast organized by the Department of Physiology will enlighten you and enrich you with the new knowledge. With this, I thank the Department of Physiology for giving me this opportunity. I congratulate the organizing team and I wish them good luck for this CME. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for motivating us and supporting us for conducting our CME. Thank you, sir. Let's move on to the next session. Next session will be Vote of Thanks by Dr. Jagadamba, Associate Professor, SUMC. Over to you, ma'am.
Good morning to all. I, Dr. Jagadamba, on behalf of organizing team, have the privilege and pleasant task of delivering the vote of thanks on this occasion. I'd like to thank the Chief Patron and Founder Chairman of SDUHR and SDUT, Sri R.L. Jalapaji, for his enduring support for all the academic activity. I would like to express our gratitude to our Honorable Chancellor of SDUHR, Dr. Rajesh Jagadale, for his support and guidance in organizing this event, and thank our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Dr. Pradeep Kumar, sir, for our CME. I also extend our special thanks to the Registrar SDUHR, Dr. KNV Prasad, for his support in organizing this event. We also wish to express deep sense of gratitude to our beloved Principal and Dean of Faculty of Medicine, Dr. Sriramulu PN, for providing encouragement in organizing this program. We are honored by the presence of our esteemed chief guest, Dr. B.M. Hegde, who delivered the inaugural message, and our guest speakers, Dr. Pratap Sanchite, Dr. Mohan Y. Badgandi, Dr. Venkat Narayan Joshi, Dr. Achyutan Ishwar, Dr. Shekhar Anambotla, for their kind consent to accept our invitation and be part of this program and share their valuable knowledge with us. Thank you, sir. Heartfelt thanks to our Vice Principal, Dr. Shashida KN, Medical Superintendent, Dr. Sheila, for their presence and support. My special thanks to Finance Department, SDHR, for their timely support in making this event possible. I would also like to acknowledge contribution to the CME by MART, Bangalore. On this occasion, I take the opportunity to extend a sincere thanks to all the delegates who, with their presence from different parts of India, have enriched the program. I thank the supporting staff, technical staff, for their constant support in organizing this event. I once again thank all the delegates who are present in these sessions from different regions to be part of this CME. Last but not the least, I wish to express our pride and gratitude to our HOD, Dr. Vinuta Shankar, whose enthusiasm, energy, and dynamism and constant support in organizing this CME. And as no program can become successful with a single person, I wish to extend my heartfelt thanks to each member of the organizing team and volunteers for their support. Thank you once again to each and everyone for making this event successful with your contribution, without which the event would not be possible. Thank you all once again. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Let's move on to the next session.
Okay, we'll give a break.
Before that, let's have a small break for 10 minutes.
బయటకు వస్తున్నా
ಮಧುಶ್ರೀ ಏನ್ ಮಧುಶ್ರೀ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಸರಿ ಈ ಕುಟುಂಬ ಇತ್ತು ಸರ್ ಮತ್ತು ಸರ್ ಒಂದು ಆಪರೇಷನ್ ಇತ್ತು ಅವಾಗ ಸರ್ ನಿಂತ ಹೊಡೋದ ನಿಂತ ಹೊಡೋದ ಮಾತಲ್ಲಿ ಮುಡ್ದಂತ ಆಗಲ್ಲ ಬಾವಡ ಮಾತಲ್ಲ బాగుండే మనకి కాస్ట్యూమ్ మొత్తం బాగా పనిచేస్తుంది తీసుకోవడం
Hello, can you hear me? Hello.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We can hear you, sir.
Okay, so just give me 2 minutes, we'll start. ಕೊಡಿ ಇವ್ರಿಗೆ ಬಂದಿದೆ ನನಗೆ ಬಂದಿದೆ ಅಷ್ಟೇ ಅವರಿಗೆ ನಮ್ದು ನಾನು ಇವ್ರದ್ದು ಮತ್ತೆ You want some more coffee? No. Is it 11:30 already?
No, it's at 11:26.
11:26. Okay. They just have to introduce me and start. That's all. That is why I don't like to. This lady. This is from Devraj Arts Medical College. So I just accepted because it is an institution.
What do you want? Any for me?
I just have to. Here. Okay, sir. Can we start? If anybody knocks, just say sorry, huh? So can we start? And they're all muted themselves, I think.
So just for 2 minutes, sir.
Okay. I'll wait. This, no? This is actually, I get reaction here. That is why I put this here on the. This is the, that is how blessed it is. This helps actually.
It's good.
Yeah, it has almost gone.
For you, I have like always keep it here.
The rooms are not very good. They are suffocating, like you feel.
There's not any windows.
No, not.
After one hour.
Above you are not seen, no? My old room.
No.
That was very good. That had a big window. The first room at the corner was mine.
3 steps you have to go down and then the rooms were there like
No.
This is long back.
Ground floor, right at the corner where I wait outside for car.
Okay.
Just near that corner.
That time
I could see the main entrance and the parking area, whole area without any problem.
Now everything is. That's why they are making basements. So
It
will be a bit.
Only thing is here how to change to share
Slides and all.
screen sharing.
Yes, I will.
You can do it.
Let's begin with the next session. Our next session will be by Dr. Mohan Y. Badgandi on intermittent fasting versus continuous energy restriction, type 2 diabetes mellitus, and obesity. Let's just have an introduction to Dr. Mohan Y. Badgandi by Mr. Suresh SVMC.
Good morning to everyone. I'm glad to introduce Dr. Mohan Y. Badgandi. He is a senior consultant at Department of Diabetes and Endocrinology, Manipala Hospitals, Bangalore. He has pursued medicine at Bombay University and worked as a research physician at Siva Research Center, Bombay. Then his fellowship program on diabetes and endocrinology at Leeds University, UK. Thyroid medicine at Edinburgh University at UK. He also done a fellowship on the diabetes and metabolic medicine.
Their network issues. Their network issue. Yeah, we can see everything.
We can't hear you properly.
You can start, sir. I'm ready to the co-host.
There is so much of audio disturbance.
So you can start your session, sir.
Yeah, I'll change to. I'll share the screen. Give me 1 minute.
Okay.
We have to go to.
Just
Go to keynote will be there, no? No, here it is. Ramakrishna, your person that will not come.
It will come. Able to see my screen?
Not yet. 1 second. Yeah. Yeah. This one. So,
So do you need any assistance, sir? Is there any problem, sir?
They can see you. Hello.
Yes, sir. It's visible, sir. The PPT is visible, sir. You can start, sir.
Wait, just wait. I think background. That's the first one. No? Can you see screen? Can you also? I'll
Yes,
start.
sir. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Thank you very much for this kind invitation, and I'm very glad to speak on this subject, which is my favorite subject. So,
There's the network connection issues in technology.
Sir, your screen is not visible now. Mohan sir?
but when you touch, it is happening like that. Don't enlarge, I think. Or you want to go to the
Some pop-up will come. Don't click the OK, doctor. Just
okay.
let me see what is there. They can see.
Can you hear now? Can you see now?
Yeah, we can hear you and we can see the slides also. You should just make it the total screen show, sir. Yes, sir. Right. Done. You can start, sir.
Okay. I'll start off. Yeah. Thank you. Let me start off with what I'm going to do is I'm going to slowly introduce the subject, and I will give you various definitions of and what are the different patterns of intermittent energy restriction, and what is the obesity and weight loss in today's dilemma, and how does it help in type 2 diabetes, and finally give you the conclusions. And just before giving you the conclusion, a little bit more information I want to add. How type 2 diabetes is reversible based on energy restriction and continued fasting, and how it is different from intermittent fasting, and what are the pros and cons or benefits of intermittent fasting. So I will go to the next slide. In the last decade, there has been a very much interest and focus on the dietary strategies that manipulate energy intake unconventionally, which are known as intermittent fasting or intermittent energy restriction. As you all know, obesity is a global problem. It is almost amounts to pandemic, and obesity related risks are very high, and obesity related diseases are very common. Though we have not been able to prove that obesity causes a particular type of disease like say diabetes or hypertension or osteoarthritis or cardiovascular disease. They are all, there is a link which has been established, but there is no causal relationship which has been established, because all obese patients do not have same or a similar pattern of diseases. So that is why I think it is a big dilemma. Now, obesity related morbidity and mortality is also high, and the lifestyle modification programs that we adopt in our day-to-day clinical practice are very difficult to appreciate and difficult to follow and difficult to achieve the goals at the end of the day. And it is very much individualized and it is very much focused, and there are no medications given to improve lifestyle modification. That's why patients also find it very difficult to follow it. So this approach has gained greater attention and popularity in the last 10 to 15 years, and people have found out various ways of doing daily exercises or physical activity, and also people have found out various ways of restricting the energy intake and how to restrict energy intake, how to reduce the proportion of dietary proteins, dietary fats, dietary carbohydrates. And at the same time, and people have been also doing a lot of research in nutrition and health disorders apart from chronic diseases. So that is why I think there is a lot of information available today. And this branch of medicine, that is the nutrition in health and diseases, is growing by pages every day. So that is why I think it is very important for all of us to know a little bit more than what we know at the moment. So there is now what exactly is the energy restriction? And the two most popular forms of intermittent energy or intermittent fasting are based on characteristics of diet. That means in a week, there are 7 days in a week. And out of 7 days, what you can do is you can take 2 days, you can fast, either 2 consecutive days or 2 non-consecutive days. And these will be called as fast days. And on those days, you can restrict your energy intake and it will be called as intermittent fasting. Now, this can be converted into according to individual needs or individual choice. And somebody can do the energy restrictions also on alternate day in a week. That will become, like 4 into 3 or 3 out of 7 days. And sometimes you can do alternate day modified fasting. That is, you can decide on how much carbohydrate to take, how much fat to take, or how much proteins to take on each day. And also you can modify your non-fast days. That is the so-called feed days. That is, say, if you are doing 5 days non-fast day, how much calorie to take, you can decide, and how much calorie to restrict on your fast days, you can decide based on your daily energy requirement, your day-to-day work, as well as what other comorbidities you have. Now, all this can be done not by just yourself. You need a help. You need a help of a nutritionist or a dietitian or a physician who is very motivated and very interested in providing such care. So if you look at intermittent energy restriction, you have 5:2, where there are 2 fast days, consecutive or non-consecutive days. And during the fast days, you can reduce the energy intake by anywhere up to 90 to 100%, or you can reduce it to 75%, or you can reduce it to 50%. And all this is labeled as intermittent energy restriction or intermittent fast. And during these fast days, also you can decide about how you can vary your energy restrictions. Not necessarily it has to be same, what you can do is you can start with a smaller energy restrictions, like say 25% for the first month, next month 50%, third month 75%, and 90% or 80%. You can go on increasing the energy restriction. So that is called as a graded response curve. So it may take some time for you to get adapted and achieve the required goals. So that is why this is very important for you. And for all of this, what is important is the dietary pattern is very important. And that is why I told you first that what is important for patients is that they must consult a dietitian and a nutritionist. When we say dietary pattern, it is important, and dietary patterns are important even on the non-fast days as well as the fast days. So dietary patterns with IER have emerged as an attractive alternative to continued fasting. As you know, it is very difficult because it is very difficult to stick to continued fasting. It may be easier to do it for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 3 months, or 6 months. But beyond that, it becomes a little bit difficult. Adherence, compliance, all these problems start. And then there are a lot of psychological and social impacts. And the other problems start is the compromised eating patterns and compromised energy imbalance. All these will be seen on the other days. So that is why this type of intermittent fasting is very easy to do as compared to continued fasting. And there are benefits of intermittent fasting as compared to continued fasting. One is, of course, the most people will look at weight loss. So intermittent fasting requires calorie restriction only on pre-specified days of the week or relatively prolonged interval during such days. That means 2 days out of 7 days, you may require a continued energy restriction over a prolonged period of about, say, 16 hours, 18 hours, 24 hours, or even 12 hours. That is how you can manipulate, or you can be under the supervision of dietitian and do it. And there are some of the metabolic benefits which are achieved by calorie restrictions are primarily related to energy restrictions and not related per se to the amount of the proteins or the fats or the carbohydrates that you eat, or the amount of energy that you burn. So those are other important issues that you need to consider. But there is always a problem of comparing the weight loss with intermittent fasting as compared to continued fasting. Continued fasting over a long period gives much better benefits in terms of weight loss, metabolic parameters, as well as the prevention of diseases and prevention of obesity-related complications. Whereas over a short term, the gains of intermittent fasting are usually seen within 4 weeks to 12 weeks. So that is very important in terms of patient management. It has been suggested that repeated short periods of significant calorie restrictions are also on a specific days are also very important in terms of achieving the goals. What you can do is you can teach a patient how to start with intermittent fasting, and in between, say after 12 weeks or something, you can impose continued calorie restriction for about a week or 2 weeks, and that gives you an added advantage in terms of metabolic parameters as well as the weight loss and prevention of diseases. So let's move on from this to next. There are, as I told you earlier, what are the other, what are the various ways of fasting? That is alternate day fasting protocol is where you can start with 75% energy restriction on 3 or 4 non-consecutive days of the week, and on a free weekdays, that is non-fasting day, depending on your weight and what goal you want to achieve, you can take about, say, 1600 to 2000 kilocalorie diet, well distributed, healthy diet in the form of say 3 meals and 3 snacks, and very healthy diet it has to be. It cannot be a junk food. It cannot be something that is over the counter. It has to come from your dietitian or a nutritionist. The other thing is that when you start with say twice a week, you can be a little bit more liberal in the beginning, and then you can go on tightening your dietary restrictions, and you can also go on reducing the calorie requirements on the other days. And when you do like that, you start noticing that there is a significant weight loss by about 4 to 12 weeks. And also there is a general health improves as well as general well-being, and you also start getting good sleep and good energy, good appetite patterns. And your day-to-day activities also start improving. And the third energy restriction regimen is in terms of number of hours of fasting and number of hours you are allowed to eat on each of these days, which are known as a fast days. They can be 16 to 8 or 18 to 6 or 20 to 4. When we say 16 to 8, 16 hours you are allowed to fast, and 8 hours you are allowed to eat. And during that time, again, you have to restrict your energy, just like how I mentioned to you before, that it has to be either 25% restriction, 50% restriction, or 75% restriction. So this can be in terms of 8 hours, 6 hours, or 4 hours. These are all individual adjustments that one can make depending on the nature of your day-to-day work or daily activities, and what is your profession, and what is your sleep-wake cycle, and what is the amount of energy you can restrict and tolerate. So it is very important for you. So the window of fasting should be preferably from night. Say, for example, if you want to fast, the fasting should start somewhere in the evening from about 7 to 8 till next morning, 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. That is the time when you can take breakfast, and about 12 o'clock you can take your midday meal, and by evening you can take your evening meal. After that, you should be able to fast completely. That gives you a better results. So next, let me just show you few more things. Now, it has been shown that intermittent fasting can lead to a weight loss of about minimum of about say 5 to 10% every week within a time period of about 4 weeks to 24 weeks. One can achieve about 5 to 10% of the ideal body weight loss can be achieved. So if you look in terms of how much can somebody lose every week, it is about 0.75 kilograms per week when you do alternate day fasting. That means 3 to 4 days a week, your weight loss is maximum. That is about 0.75 kilograms per week. And if you do 2 consecutive days, your weight loss can be about 0.25 kilograms per week. So this is something that is physiological, and it is realistic. So you have to be very convinced about this, and this is a good weight loss. I think more than this, if you try, the compliance problems will start and you will not be able to achieve any goal at all. And the critical question to address is whether this weight loss efficacy is superior to that observed after continued energy restriction. When you compare with continued or the continued fasting, definitely continued fasting gives you a much better goal and results, because you can do it for a longer time, and there is a consistency, and there is a continued energy restriction, and there is a continued energy burning. So that is why, and you are under supervision for a longer time. That is why you can get better results. So now, weight loss in both these groups, how do we see? Majority of the clinical studies have shown that statistically significant results cannot be obtained because in intermittent energy restriction, you can get weight loss early, whereas continued energy restriction, weight loss starts, but it takes a little bit longer to see the results. But the results are better in continued energy restriction as compared to intermittent fasting. But the results are much earlier in intermittent fasting. And also the calorie restriction, when it is about, say, 50 to 70%, whether it is in intermittent or continued, the results are more or less about, say, roughly you can get as much as about weight loss, as much as about, say, 1 kg per week or 0.75 kg per week. And again, it is similar when you do 16 to 8 hours fasting. 16 hours of fasting and 8 hours of feed also gives you a similar weight loss and similar continued isoenergetic, continuous hypocaloric diet or consistent meal timings. That is very important in our day-to-day practice. If you are looking at such issues, that you have to be consistent with the timings. 12 months continued trial has shown that these results can be achieved if you supervise the patient regularly. Now, the next one is intermittent, again, hypocaloric diets. Weight loss maintenance is defined by 10% weight loss. And also you have to wait for 12 months to compare the results. And the first 3 to 6 months, you can see the results in IER, whereas in CER, that is a continued, you can see better results at the end of 12 months. So if you look at IER, there are some problems which come into play. Compliance adherence is a difficult problem when it comes to continued energy restriction as compared to intermittent is easier to follow. Patients are able to stick to intermittent fasting for 6 months, whereas continued fasting for 1 year or more is difficult. You may require a lot of help from clinician as well as dietitian. So that is why it is difficult to achieve. So in day-to-day, it is difficult. So in people who don't have any disease pattern or chronic disease, intermittent energy is very useful, whereas continued energy is very useful for patients with chronic disease who have obesity. So next one is again diets and fat loss. When you do intermittent fasting or continued fasting, what you need to do is you need to cut down the carbohydrates to about 20 to 30%, and remaining 40% should be proteins, 30% should be fat. That gives you a better result in terms of metabolic parameters, weight loss, and also the muscle mass is not lost, and skeletal mass, which is otherwise lost if you are on more carbohydrate and less proteins, can be prevented, so that your day-to-day activities and your physical activity as well as your body build, all this remains within the normal pattern. So, and lean body mass, that is what I was trying to tell you. Skeletal mass is something that one should not go on losing when they are on either intermittent fasting or continued fasting. Though there are some benefits like, say, insulin sensitivity improves, and fasting insulin comes down, insulin resistance comes down, and glycemic parameters improve, and the fat mass comes down when you lose lean mass. But muscle mass should be maintained, and bone strength should be maintained, and patient's well-being should be maintained based on your pattern of eating, that is called carbohydrate to protein and fat ratio. So once you do that, it is very easy to maintain that. What is recommended today is that 1.2 grams per kilogram body weight of protein is given daily, so that patients don't lose much skeletal mass when they are doing this intermittent fasting, and they remain healthy. Now, the next issue is there is a definite improvement in the glucose metabolism in both IER as well as CER. Of course, the IER is very useful in patients who have either pre-diabetes or people who have a very strong family history of type 2 diabetes, who are either normal weight or overweight. And the same thing can be applied to people who have diabetes also, but there you require a little bit longer time. So that is why glucose or glycemic parameters improve, insulin levels improve, and sometimes the patient's insulin requirements come down, or even the OADs or whatever anti-diabetic medications we use can come down in these patients. Now, various studies are going on and various studies have shown the benefits. I won't go into details of that because that is a separate subject altogether. Now, insulin sensitivity, as I told you, that it improves in both the patients because the muscle mass starts coming down and the visceral fat as well as the systemic fat also comes down when you go on intermittent fasting, and that improves the insulin sensitivity. Now, there is a slight difference in the gender, significance. When people go on intermittent fasting and continued fasting, men seem to respond better as compared to women. I mean, there's a lot of work going on. We don't know why this happens. Maybe it is related to underlying hormonal status of women, or the way the pattern, the way the fat mass is distributed in the body. Now, obese and type 2 diabetes patients definitely benefit from both intermittent energy restriction as well as continued energy restriction. And these two modalities have helped us to improve the diabetes care, diabetes management, and improve their diabetes complications. And also morbidity and mortality has come down. People are able to lead a good quality of life, and people require much less insulin they require. And that is why I think it is very important today to practice both these systems in type 2 diabetes patients. A combination of hypocaloric diet, which I told you earlier, improves the HbA1c, fasting blood sugar, as well as the lipid profile and the renal parameters. So before I come to conclusion, what I will do is I will just show you there is a study going on called as DIRECT study in Newcastle University where I worked, and where they are looking at people. This is going on in Newcastle as well as Glasgow, where they are looking at people with diabetes of 5 to 6 years duration who are on a very good prescribed hypocaloric diet or hypocarbohydrate diet, and who are on 40 to 45% of proteins and 30 to 35% of fats. And these people have been shown to lose weight. That is, they have lost fat mass, they have lost visceral fat, and their fasting insulin has improved, and their first phase insulin secretion has improved. These were all type 2 diabetes patients, and who were one time on anti-diabetic or oral medications. Today, they are declared as their type 2 diabetes has been reversed. That means they can be labeled as non-diabetic. Their first phase insulin is normal, their HbA1c is normal, and their fasting blood sugar is normal. And this is the overview of the DIRECT study. If anybody is interested, you can go to this website. It is called DIRECT study. It is done by Professor Roy Taylor and Professor Michael Lean. And these are the people whom I worked with in Newcastle. And it is an excellent study which has been shown to now, it's going on 4 years. And remission of diabetes has been proven. Though diabetes profile of these patients on intermittent fasting as well as continued fasting. Of course, there are advantages and disadvantages, but definitely I would recommend intermittent fasting for normal weight or overweight individuals who don't have any chronic disease. If you have a chronic disease, I think it is better that you go on a continued energy restrictions, and you need a medical advice from a dietitian in nutrition, and also from either an endocrinologist or a general physician who has an interest in nutrition management. So with that, any questions? I will.
Any questions, participants? If you have any questions, please unmute yourself and feel free to ask, sir. You can post your questions on chat box too.
Sir, I am Dr. Anmantappa, Professor of Ophthalmology. Can diabetic patients on insulin can go for fasting?
Sir, they can do intermittent fasting, but provided they are under supervision, and they have to be taking adequate calories during the daytime, and they should be under supervision of a diabetologist or a diabetes specialist and a dietitian.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Anybody else with questions?
Sir, this is Dr. Vinay from Devarajas Medical College, sir. Sir,
Yes.
I wanted to know what is the role of intermittent fasting in polycystic ovarian syndrome?
Polycystic ovarian syndrome also we consider at one end of the spectrum. It is a pre-diabetic state, and they are usually overweight, and they also have a visceral fat, and it works very good for them, intermittent fasting, provided it results in at least a 10% weight loss.
Okay, sir. Sir, one more question. Sir, if you see the Indian profile of diabetics, they are usually lean mass with a muscular, if you see the counterparts at the western side. So is it advisable for such lean mass with the diabetes also for a fasting?
Yes, that is what they have shown in this direct study. People from India or Asians who are in the United Kingdom who have been shown to have a very large amount of visceral fat, when they go on intermittent fasting or continued fasting, they lose visceral fat and their insulin profile improves and the glycemic profile improves, and many of them have been able to go back to only diet and physical activity, and they have been able to stop their insulin as well as oral medications for hyperglycemia. And these people also, they have been mostly lean and normal weight individuals.
Fine, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Sir, good morning. Ravi Shankar sir here. Suppose a patient on rapid-acting insulin and then long-acting insulin, in addition to that, taking oral hypoglycemic agents like metformin and tinipride or something like that, and on regular physical activity, is it advisable to go for intermittent fasting?
Sir, no, sir. Once somebody is on a basal bolus therapy, short-acting, long-acting, it is very difficult to have a long spell of intermittent fasting for such patients. It is very difficult, very difficult.
So it's not ideal to have.
No.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Very difficult. Okay. Is that all right, or any more questions?
Is there anybody else with questions? So there are a few questions on the chat box.
Yes, madam. Hello. Yeah, this is Professor, madam.
Yes, you can proceed. You can ask, sir.
Yeah, can you hear, madam?
Yes, sir. You're audible. You can ask, sir.
Yes, madam. Madam, actually,
Yeah.
I saw that diabetes
You
can
can
be
talk to sir
reversible.
directly, sir. Sir is here. You
Yeah,
can talk to sir.
sir, you said that diabetic type 2 diabetes can be reversible by this intermittent fasting and all. So how the
Yes.
insulin resistance it can be reversed as a sensitive one also? Because in type 2 diabetes, enough amount of insulin will be there, but it is resisted.
Yeah.
Yeah, due to that, that glucose level it may be increased. Then how come that it can be reversed? That insulin
Sir,
resistance.
what they are doing, what they are trying to show in direct study is that so many factors that we think are related to type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance, most of the pathological mechanisms originate from visceral fat. And there is a visceral fat in the abdomen which is deposited around the pancreas, around the kidneys, in the liver. When you lose that fat, lot of these pathological mechanisms in type 2 diabetes disappear. But for that, type 2 diabetes has to be less than 5-6 years duration.
Okay, sir. If it is more than that, it's impossible.
It is difficult to reverse because by that time various other damages have taken place. So I think I'm sure you are interested in this subject. You can go on the website direct. I mean, there is so much explanation and material, and they are doing a very wonderful study.
Okay, sir.
Now
Because
they have
even
got,
even lean persons also the type 2 diabetic people are there.
Yes, lean persons also can reverse.
Okay, sir. That's what might be the mechanism behind.
Yeah. And there are people now, they have started, this study has started even in India. There are people doing in a smaller groups of 18-20 patients, and they are contributing to the same study, and they are getting the same type of results.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
So there are a few questions on the chat box. Farida is asking if intermittent fasting has any role in type 1 diabetes mellitus in children.
No. Intermittent diabetes pathology is totally different. It is very difficult to do any type of fasting in type 1 diabetes.
Okay, there's another question, sir. Which works better, calorie restriction or intermittent fasting to control blood sugar levels?
Calorie restriction is much better.
Okay, sir. There's one more question, sir. In cancer patient, they are not able to eat. So is it good for their health?
No, not at all.
But
no.
someone has asked
They should be able to take some calories because for daily activities, we need at least 1200 to 1400 kilocalories, to maintain the daily activity and the daily metabolism.
Yes. Sir, Dr. Lavanya is asking you about your comments on 2-meal diet.
2-meal diet, yes, a 2-meal diet is acceptable provided you adhere to it, and compliance is a big question mark. So if you are able to take breakfast and lunch in the evening, probably you can take whatever else you want. That is how people used to eat in the olden days. People used to eat 2 meals a day, one at about say 10 o'clock, 10:30, 11 o'clock, and one in the evening at about 6, 7 o'clock. More than that, people never used to eat before. Mainly, I think the two things that are important is, one is the sleep-wake cycle. If you disturb the sleep-wake cycle and you disturb the basic sleep-wake hormones, and once you disturb that, your whole metabolism gets disturbed. That is what is, I think, causing these lifestyle diseases. So eating late and eating dinner, heavy dinner at 11 o'clock, I think that is what is causing a lot of problems.
Yes.
And also, of course, the lunch also, you have to be having a lunch by midday, not at 4 o'clock. So these are the issues, nobody wants to do any study because they are beyond any proof that they are not correct. So I think that is what we need to improve.
Yes, sir. There's one more question, sir, from Divya. Sir, in your personal experience, which of the three kinds of intermittent fasting did you find easily applicable in daily life?
What I have found myself is that many of my patients, they do alternative fasting very well.
Alternative fasting, sir.
Yeah, alternate day.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir.
Excuse me, sir. Madam, one small
Yes, sure.
doubt I'm having. I'm Dr. Dhanashree Naidu. One small doubt, sir. Sir, which is better, sir? Alternative depends upon the person, obesity or diabetes, or this alternate and daily diet. What is the interval to be taken, sir? Hello?
No, madam. Ultimately, whatever type of diet you want to prescribe to the patient, it is patient has to accept. So it is the patient's choice. You have to give the choice to the patient. We cannot give a prescription to the patient and ask him to follow, which is very difficult. If you tell the patient, give a choice, and the patient can come back and give you the results, or you can counsel him and then decide. It is very difficult to impose on a patient.
Okay, depends upon that. But what is the interval, sir? Which is better? You're saying alternate days or intervals? I want that, sir. Please.
8 hours of eating and 16 hours of fasting, I have found very useful.
8 hours of eating and 16 hours of fasting. Okay,
Yeah.
that is daily, sir. Daily, sir.
Alternate day.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, there are a few more questions. Can I, sir?
Yep.
Yes. Ramya is asking, when we say calorie restriction, merging intermittent fasting with keto diet, will the results differ, sir?
No, madam. Keto, we don't prescribe, we don't advise keto diet to anybody.
Okay, sir. There's one more question, sir. Did you find any evidence if intermittent fasting helps diabetics with associated diarrhea predominant irritable bowel syndrome? Does it help IBS?
See, irritable bowel syndromes and diarrhea syndromes associated with diarrhea, I think they need to be worked up first, because many of them are related to either pancreatic problems or malabsorption. So their dietary changes need to be made before you start somebody on intermittent fasting.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for your valuable question. And even our interaction went well. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Sir, I cleared my
Bye.
doubts, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Hello, sir. Let's move on to the next session. Next session is by Dr. Venkatanarayana Joshi. Sir will be talking to us on Ayurveda approach for intermittent fasting and its relevance to gut microbiome. Let's have a brief introduction about Sir. So, Dr. Venkatanarayana Joshi, sir has done his BAMS, MD Ayurveda, and PhD in Ayurveda. Sir has conferred a PhD in Ayurveda from Gujarat Ayurveda University, Jamnagar, India. Sir migrated to United Kingdom in 2002 as a highly skilled professional. Sir started teaching at the College of Ayurveda in affiliation with universities in London, such as Thames Valley University. He also taught at Eucharisty Ayurveda, Croatia, and Ayurveda School in Tapavan, France. Sir is a consultant at Gentle Birth Method and at Tooting Broadway and Kailash Center, St. John's Wood. Sir is a board member of the British Ayurvedic Medical Council, and has regular workshops on Ayurveda in Germany, Austria, and Spain. Sir was facilitated by All-Party Parliamentary Group on Indian Traditional Sciences and conferred the prestigious Ayurveda Ratna Award in Houses of Parliament in 2016. So Sir will be talking to us in this virtual CME on the topic of Ayurveda approach for intermittent fasting and its relevance to gut microbiome. Over to you, sir.
Namaste, namaste to you all.
Hello, sir.
First
So I'll
of
just
all,
make you the co-host so that you can share your slides, sir.
yeah, let me share.
Yes, sir. You can now
Namaste
share.
to all.
Yes, sir. It is visible. You need to
Yeah,
make it a PowerPoint mode, sir. I mean, slideshow mode, sir.
yeah.
Sure, sir.
First of all, thank you for this invitation, Honorable Founder Jalapa sir, Nagaraja sir, and Reverend my Guruji, Dr. B.M. Hegde sir, Dr. Sriramulu Garu, and Ushaji, Dr. Jagadamba, and all organizers of this Devaraju's Higher Academy. So, from Ayurveda point of view, intermittent fasting, how it is relevant, and the relevance to our gut. First of all, we must understand simple principle, Ati Sarvatra Varjayet in Sanskrit. Ati means excess. Excess of anything is always a contraindication. Not only that, from Ayurveda point of view, improperly doing things, excessively doing things, inadequately doing things. These are the three aspects which are interfering for any protocol where we plan to bring lagutva, langana, lightness, weight reduction, health restoration, health promotion, longevity, and so on. You talk about these kind of what we are talking today for the conditional way of restoring health by intermittent fasting. So what does it equate to the concept of intermittent fasting in Ayurveda is the kind of planned periodic detox, PPD. Planned periodic detox is the process in Ayurveda, the best example for intermittent fasting. How does this work? What is the plan? And how do we periodically detox our body? And what is the necessary? And these are all aspects we must understand before we take up any experimentation on our healthy body. So healthy fasting for relatively being health. And that is very important. What does it mean by healthy fasting? How it is relevant in day-to-day life? See, many speakers, they're all very learned scholars from conventional medicine, and they spoke about all their experimentations. I respect them. But we must respect, from Ayurveda point of view, the periodical, the regulation is on the basis of the nature and nature's principles. And that is what we say, what is the intermittent means. How do I mean? These nature and nature's controlling energies. Just to look at the metaphor, and what are we under the influence of mighty cosmos is the biggest evidence, the sun. The sun is the most visible, energetic, mystical influence on the planet Earth, not only on the life. Imagine all the monsoons are being set by the kind of the solar flames, the conscious, living, controlled energy in the entire universe for the life on the planet is the sun. So based on this principle in Ayurveda, we understand everything what the sun gives us, how the sun's energy is being controlled in our physiology. For example, the radiation from the sun is unwanted, and we have a wonderful filtration through and different atmospheres, troposphere, whatever the atmospheres of the different layers with the ozone. Now you see how nature is filtering through the energy for the plants into the life for ourselves. From this is what the energy, we call it as pitta, energy we call it as metabolic restoration, energy what we feel in the noontime, a hunger. It's a symbolic way to see how sun induces in our physiology the hunger for the noontime. And that is, we have to understand the principles in Ayurveda before we understand what is intermittently can be followed and observed, the kind of the fasting recommended by Ayurveda. It's a huge, immense. Looking from that point of the control on the planet Earth and the life, one is the sun, another is the moon. These are the two influences. Now we understand how NASA cannot understand the mystical planet moon. It is not planet at all. That's a different story. We know how mythologically explained in the Sri Sukta. Chandram, Hiranmayim, Lakshmim. So whatever it is, I don't want to go into that mystical form of mythology. But you say the Manasas Chandrama, the mind is the moon. The moon influences the mind while the consciousness is influenced, triggered by the sun. If somebody is working under the ground, under dungeon, they are not seeing enough adequate sun, they are not healthy. So think about these energies, how they influence on our body is a periodical way of understanding the intermittent fasting in Ayurveda. So this intermittent fasting in periodic way from the sun to the moon being controlled by the atmosphere of the planet Earth is the sole understanding in physiology as well. So atmospheric way of a connectivity and control, self-restoration, self-triggering, autonomous, and as well as the body which controls the mind or the sense in our body, in each cell, in all our systems. And what is that power of self-control is all that atmosphere core responsible in Ayurveda known as Vata. The sun is Pitta, atmosphere is Vata, and the moon is Kapha, the restorative point. These are the three principles where Ayurveda is based on. And if you say the first principles, when you say Dharma, Artha, Kama, Mokshanam, Arogyam, Mulamuttamam, if we don't care our health, and health is not, our body is not going to respond for whatever the protocols you follow it. And that's the reason why intermittent fasting is periodically controlled by the hotness from the sun to the coldness from the moon. The same light from the heart from the sun is a cool energy from the moon. We all know how moon influences for triggering all the mechanism of the defense in the plants. All alkaloids, glycosides, flavonoids, defense mechanisms, bitterness, the thorns and survivalness, everything is instinctively under the influence of the moonlight. Whereas the photosynthesis for the life is produced the energy, carbohydrates, food from the sun. And both are controlled by the atmosphere. That is the monsoons. So how the monsoons trigger by means of the hotness, coldness, dampness, water. These are the three. And these three in UK, when you say that what are the seasons, we have like a spring or autumn or winter and less summer. So based on the hot, cold, in between is the marshy water. And that is what principle of Ayurveda understand periodically 3 times a year or extensively as the Rutu or the seasons 6 times if it is balanced is the way the kind of detox is planned known in Ayurveda is Panchakarma. And that is what the restoration of the health optimized for being ill. But being well, being healthy, that's a different story of following intermittent fasting. As everybody was talking about 8 hours of the eating periods to the 16 hours of the resting, that's perfectly well. But then we must understand the protocols on the basis of the timings. The timings are divided in Ayurveda for the phases of the span of life, 0 to 16 years as a childhood, 16 to 30 as a being youth, 30 to 60 is being adulthood, 60 to 90 is being old age, 90 to 120 years is again the childhood. the periodic sequence according to our era. If you talk the Kruta era, Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, Kali era, and where we are now in this Kali era, our span of 100 years is average life. Somebody may live up to 120 years as an exceptional. And that is a periodically we must observe the age-wise, and then accordingly you prescribe what is the intermittent fasting. Otherwise, there are so many patients who will come here in UK. They were all vegans. They were all skinny and bony. They were all having problems, as the previous doctor from Manipal was talking about, that there is no sense of regularity patterns for eating. And then people are working in the odd shifts and odd nights. They don't know how to have the best digestion in the mornings, as we see we used to have in our childhoods, coming from this chaldanam or the kind of the foods from ambalis, or these people going for the farming and working. They were very healthy. So whatever it is, that is a periodic way of understanding Brahme Muhurte Uttishte Swasto Rakshartam Ayushaha. The principle of the first Ayurveda telling about that, what is that period of the protocol for an individual sleep-wake schedule, allows you to get up in the morning before sunrise, is a periodic division based on these energies. Say, for example, morning is kapha time, noon is the pitta time, evening is vata time, vice versa. Early evening is again the kapha time, and midnight is the pitta time, and early morning is vata time. There's a cycle pattern. This is what we call it circadian rhythms, or all sorts of this biological clock is being set in through with the sleep-wake schedules, and every physiological functions are being restored when you prescribe a protocol that works. Otherwise, everything is either excessively done, improperly done, underdone. That is in the way the dysfunctions of the gut is responsible for all the misleading of the connectivity to the brain, and that is the biggest source of intelligence what we have is the gut in Ayurveda. And that is what my aims to understand the identifying and understanding the gut-brain connectivity, and true literatures, so much of vast information in Ayurveda, but it's very difficult to code up everything together. And to the context, I would like to talk about how do we restore back and kickstart our metabolic processes and balance our consumption to the spending means with the principles of the natures what we understand through Ayurveda, and then apply metaphorically what it is there in the cosmos is there within us, is the concept to understand, and some of the recommendations would like to give, and on the basis of Ayurvedic intermittent fasting. And these are the three pillars of Ayurveda. Sarve api rogau mandagnau sutaram udaranicha. And that is a principle saying that all the diseases, by all means, all the dysfunctions, and whether you call about the lifestyle diseases because lifestyle is going wrong and our eating habits gone wrong, our understanding about the health is gone wrong, because we never eat with the mindfulness. It's a mind eating rather than mindfulness eating, because mind eating is a tricky business. And we look for the different levels of measurement for the calorific values, and we look for the working out with the exercises, and we look for the whether it is Atkins diet or the vegan diet or some sort of any the juices and what are the different formula diets. And that's the biggest mistake, because we never understand our physiology well on the basis of the principles how does this work. And that is what Ayurveda understand. Sarve api rogo, sarve api, all the diseases or possibly generating from the gut mandagnau, the agni, the digestive power is weak, and that dysfunction is attributed to the ahara, the first pillar of this Ayurveda. And the next pillar is connectivity to the nidra, is sleep-wake schedules. And as I mentioned before, the first principle, when Brahme Muhurte Uttishte Swasto Rakshartam Ayushaha, you preserve positivity of the longevity when you wake up before the sunrise, early in the morning somewhere, it's like a 2/3 to explain, 3 energies to divide it into a 12 hours phase, and 4 hours of each phase, and there will be a fraction of the phase for a rebooting phase. So that comes into a 3 hours period, like a 4 cycles. Then the last cycle would be a rebooting period. That means 3 hours before to the sunrise, if the sun and moon are balanced, that's a tropical belt. Then apply these principles to the belt that day is longer, night is longer, and sees according to season variations. Half an hour to 1 hour is the sunrise to sunset. That is the period standard we select for this period of Brahma Muhurta for an individual. Based on that, what the condition Ayurveda explains, Jirna Ajirna Nirupayan. She said that whether you digested the fast food or not, otherwise you will not need to get up in the morning. So this is the way Ayurveda compromises with the conditional recommendations for the lifestyle alterations based on the somebody is working in the night duties and they are not having a good sleep, and how they are going to digest, because they cannot just compromise. It is their duty. But then what Ayurveda says about that sleep wake schedule is what is that amount of the period of the loss of sleep, whether you have 6 to 8 hours of the sleep according to your age factors. When you are growing, we sleep less. As we know, the 1/4, half of that length of the loss of the sleep, if I lose 3 hours of sleep in my night, and then I am allowed to sleep in the day 1.5 hours. That's the recommendations for adjustments. So Ayurveda has every adjustment to the point of the diet and regulations to maintain that gut health, gut microbiota, and thus the, as B.M. Hegdeji every time telling about that, how many trillions of the 9 times of these trillions of the microbial content we are harmoniously living with the symbiosis. That is, they are leading our fate, our longevity, our physiological, our emotional health. Everything is depending on the microbiome, and that is what the health coming through from the digestion to the absorption to the detoxing to all sorts of the extended digestion to the large intestine, where we cannot, our enzymes and hormones could not break down, or the bacteria helping us to make the vitamins. And so many things are being contributed for us into the psychic health, the body somatic health, sensory mind health, and mind into the conscious heart, which is a spiritual health. There is a succession of these levels of the consciousness is being led through from our core heart, reflecting into the brain and to every part, every cell, as a reflection of the sun into thousands of mirrors. And that is what the health in Ayurveda is understood, with the health of the gut restoration is priority, with all the principles being explained while balancing the tripod of Ayurveda, from what are the foods we must eat, how should we eat, being healthy, and everything is precisely mentioned. So understand the principles of sleep-wake schedules being applied to the Brahmacharya is nothing but the brain health or the mind health or self-restraint, the power of self-restraint. And that is the highest core. We understand the consciousness is even led to the gene sequencing. If you are powerful enough into your heart, and that is what we say, that when we make a mistake, we put our hand here. When you are honest, we put our hand on the chest. And that is what the honesty as a spiritual conscious power, as a bliss which flows, that is the jiva. The power which flows in physiology is the prana through breathing, and then the being controlled at the somatic level is the vata. There are 3 levels of approach, and the control is understood with the principles of Ayurveda and how we recommend the kind of the fasting which it is required in health and being diseased. In being diseased is the Panchakarma as a periodic protocol for the detox process to follow. In health is the Patya Ahara. That is what the Hita, Hitam, Sukham, Dukkham, understanding what is conducive to an individual health is understood for recommending the kind of the foods from Ayurveda point of view. So I took only a few references from Ayurveda. It's very difficult to explain the kind of the new concept for you on the basis of the natural governing laws of the universe and cosmos is applied in Ayurveda as metaphorically to simplify understanding the sequence of this physiology. This physiology in somatic level, in systemic level, is controlled by these 5 vatas: prana, apana, vyana, udana, samana, saprana. And that is what the apana vata, as you say, it is like from the belly button to the below, what is that energy, what is that motility, what is that gut functions, what is that gut consciousness which led to one way from the belly button to down, whether it is a fetus, whether it is stools, urine, or reproductive secretions, to everything is flatus, everything is properly regulated and being moved and propelled. This propulsion of the fetus expulsion is also the synchronous way of these pains coming out, is responsible for this balance of this Apanavata gut sense. So the gut sense and entire gut from the mouth to end is a double-decker length, is having a better sense of secondary, as we all know how many millions, 600 more millions of these vagus endings or these neurons connected to the heart, to the gut, and that is what the second brain, and we have to care this gut sense, and then only we can keep our physiology healthy by understanding the gut sequence of its strength for digestion to absorption and the health of this gut microbiota. So that is, we understand how fiber and as well as complex material are being digested by this microbiota, and then the responses being supported for the technical momentum is one example. Desired physiological, as I mentioned about this Terminalia tubula among Triphala as a Ayurveda fruit. This is the best fruit, Terminalia tubula, explained in different ways. Like a Rutu Haritaki, Sindhutta Sharkara Shunti Kana Madhugunanvitai, and then said that each season, how you take this Haritaki fruit? It is a nut. And this nut is being given for even a neonatal babies within a month of period of to start small quantities for regulating these processes. So Ayurveda understood how the health can be started with the prescriptions. As I mentioned, the prescription for the new life is the day of first onwards, the cow's ghee and honey. These are the two substances. What is that palm size of a neonatal baby is being filled with the gold ashes, is being served from the day one onwards. And that is the desired way of bringing the efficacy for the immune modulation based on the gut health. More than 60% is the restoration of health day-to-day basis. Ayurveda understanding of that, what is that period or substances which are being given, and while a periodic sense of the fasting is maintained according to the age factors. Because being young, you don't have to maintain that factor. Being old, you will not get the same kind of appetite. You have to have a longer fasting hours. That we have to adjust on the basis. So we can see how pranavata is that the brain, the senses, the smell, the visual appealing, the taste, everything is the gustatory to the sensory means of the mind modulations, the interest towards taking the food, and that is being generated. Annam adana karma to pranaha kostam prakarshati. That the pranaha is restored into the entire kosta, is a visceral system supported for elementary system, whether it is exocrine like a liver, spleen, pancreas, and including the heart, lungs, and cecum and kidneys, and they are all responsible as a means of coordinated for the digestive system to respond very well with the sense of the gut as brain induced into a sensory interest for towards taking the food. Ishta rasa varna gandhopetam shadrasopetam, and everything is a principle precisely mentioned in these 5 somatic control on the basis of vata for the acceptance to the proper absorption to and then proper elimination. In a way, like pranavata and samanavata are the 2 vatas which are responsible from the mouth to gut, and the way in the stomach from the kind of the blending, for the kind of amalgamation, for the kind of churning, because you need a chain formation for better digestion system, and bhinna sanghata is the word being used when the kapha present in the stomach is being sensed by the samanavata to break down the macromolecules into a unified state before it is being digested. So everything is a sense over here. And then ultimately for the separation of the sara and kitta, what is useful, what is not useful, until the complete maturity of the stools and urine, the straw color or this stercobilage and urobilage, all these the bile salts and bile pigments and reabsorption mechanism, everything is a sense. What it is to be reabsorbed from the elimination point, that is the sense. So convoluted tubules in the kidneys that reabsorb things before you eliminate out. First you have a set that separate things, this is useful, non-useful, and from non-useful also you select what it is being useful again. And this sense of the gut is being restored in Ayurveda with the kind of the diet and recommendations which will fall partly into the intermittent fasting. So the energy flows back from this Udana Vata is uptaking from the belly button to the upwards. So the physiology in the physical landmarks from the two breast lines to the navel region is a reverse triangle. And look, that reverse triangle from the two breast line to the navel region is that sense that the gut is powerful with this strong digestive functions. And above that is the strong kapha energy, below that is the strong vata energy, needs to be balanced, and then only the energies are being from the udana is like the voice, speech, mind, everything is motivated. So the sensory means of accepting and then understanding into the mind by means of hearing, whether it is and the touching, to the visual, to the taste and smell. All five sensory means has equal five sense outputs on the basis of that speech, and as well as to the skills of the locomotion, to the hands and feet, to the reproductive, to the elimination skills. So Benjamin Graber, he was talking about the 13th cranial nerve, cloacal nerve, is a cranial nerve, is like that got higher cortical brain in conjunction with this elimination control. So this is what Ayurveda understand. The brain, heart, and the bladder sequence are being the most connected sequence, connected to the gut, and that the energies are being reflected with the circulatory levels all over the body is Vanavata, connecting to microcapillary level, and of course, and all these five is a somatic level. But still we have so many connections to body, and then body to sense, sense to mind, mind to spirit. And that is the heart, the consciousness. That level of consciousness connection is everywhere, is a modulation when we properly recommend. So more references recently coming out for the different kind of diseases are being originated from the gut. And like Parkinsonism is originating from the gut, and it is being supported by several theories. And past speakers were also talking about the Nobel Prize from the German scientist, cell biologist, and as well as the substances are being studied for this repairing DNA functions, like Indian gooseberry amla, one of the fruit in Triphala. And there are also many researchers are being explained how significantly they were all responsible for the gut detox in a way day-to-day based. The recommended substances through the dietary means of control is responsible. Chatush Prakara Samshuddhi Pipasa Marutatapa. In the Charaka Samhita, some of these references, and you can see like Upavasa. Upavasa is the word for this literal meaning of fasting. Upa means nearly and nearby. Vasa is to live or restore and living. What it is being living is the symbiotic way of gut microbiome is restored back with the kind of the fasting is one aspect of bringing lightness apart from Chatush Prakaras. Chatush Prakara applicable what I mentioned for the diseases, application of the Panchakarma. And this Panchakarma is nothing but a periodic planned detox seasonally for healthy and periodically by being illness. And what we do in this Panchakarma is absolutely the kind of the fatty acids, the kind of the lipids, the kind of the fats, because the microbiota, when it breaks down in the large intestine, produces the kind of the short-chained fatty acids which are responsible for immune modulation. And similarly, the fat substances to reduce, to burn the fat, in Ayurveda we use the fat, like say, cutting the glass with the glass. And similar principles of lubricating, anointing, different type of lipid profiles being selected from the medicated ghees in Ayurveda are used to anoint and lubricate every microcapillary before you do this kind of detox. So equally, we need to open up all the microcapillaries being lubricated with these selective lipid profiles, and then being allowed the whole body to sudate or then open the channels, open the pores. So millions of pores over the skin are being opened up for the sweating process as a means of detox beginning. And from that point, the systemic level of whether it is a downward detox as a virechana, upward detox like vamana, or the detox from the head and neck area through the nasal passage is nasya, shiro, virechana, or the detox periodically in the systemic way where the blood is being contaminated or being not being well, is let out through the leech applications and so many things to get rid of all the inflammatory process. And that is what applications of the four. And the fifth one is asthapana basti, or the enemas, which are astringent based things to restore back the health. And one is exceptionally not given is anuvasana varjya, means that the lubrications from the gut through the enemas and is contraindicated. Apart from that, pipasa is the thirst center to control. In Ayurveda is a concept of kloma is coming from this pancreatic functions for the electro water and electrolyte balances. And then to the maruta atapa is a big concept about we talked about the atmosphere, we talked about the seasons, we talked about the sun influences, and then the pachana is the digestants and what are the things. And then the upavasa comes as a means of sequence to continue with the vyayama or the exercises required for the body to bring down excess burning of the fat to restore back the health. So it's a complex procedure. It's not just only a periodic way of fasting itself is supporting for physiology to restore back without having the principles being followed, what it is the balance. And then it comes to the level of this eating habits in different levels like Adhyashana, Anashana, Amitashana, Vishamashana, Viruddhashana, Sankirnashana. All the different names are being given. It's very difficult to give out everything within this small period of time where we do not have much of the time to share with all the knowledge of the Ayurveda. But the qualitative assessment on the basis of the Lagu, Ushna, Tikshna, Vishada, Ruksha, Sukshma, Khara, Sara, all these references are giving how this Langana is to bring the lightness, Brahmana is to bring the bulkness, or that anabolic and catabolic pathways being restored back for the metabolism through the process of the sudorification or sweating process, to the process of restraining the secretions, stambhana, to the process of the rukrana is to dry up of excess of unwanted wetness, in the sense we call it as like retentions, and as well as to the lubrication and 6 interventions which will bring into the health of the body from the so many references. I do not go into those details now. And then what and when and how we are eating, some of the references to say that the intermittent fasting can be recommended. For example, I would like to give like a madhudakam. Madhudakam is a concept of the honey water detox. Very simple detox. Anybody would do. Every day they can do, but they can say the detox is a mesmerizing physiological benefit when we do periodically with the prescription. Say, for example, whether I do 1 day or 3 days or maximum 7 days. So the maximum 7 days is a period mentioned in Ayurveda for any kind of detox process you follow. So based on that energies, as we mentioned, it is no harm to try the honey and water. For example, I will give, there are 8 kinds of honey in Ayurveda. So these 8 kinds of organic, cold pressed, wild forest, whatever the best honeys we get from Portugal, and bitter honeys, acacia honey, and we talk about that that categories for based on the energies we select you differently. That's a different story. But then you dissolve in the water and drink to the extent that the person feel nausea at the filling of stomach. So honey and water being proportionately diluted, say for example 60 to 80 grams, 80 to 120 grams is a way of stretching the dosages for an individual needs, being dissolved in the water to drink on empty stomach, take half an hour is the maximum period. So these restrictions to say the honey and water is a very quick succession being absorbed very fast into the body and reaching out into the every capillary. So that is what, when the body is being enough, the sweetness will bring you a nausea. The point of the individual nausea is a parameter of the honey water being enough adequately reached out into the body, and nothing by mouth until you feel hungry. And that is whatever the hours individually will take as a period of the detox. Then you will not feel hungry after drinking this honey water, and wait until you starve, until really you starve. Then we have the Patyakara diets in Ayurveda being recommended. The Patyakara diets are all, for example, the mung beans, for example. The mung beans and a red rice, for example, that come as a fundamental basis of monocotyledonous, dicotyledonous for all essential amino acids being maintained, while the less metabolic wastages are being produced through the process of digestion, whether it is weaker or stronger, and health or ill health. So there are selective ways of doing with the Patyakara Aharas. In London, what we do, and we have a very good Mandukaparni Centella Asiatica and Tambuli we make, and the Hydrocatyl Asiatica, and it is a fresh green leaf vegetable, and it is the best detox therapeutic vegetable. And we make a link, Mandukaparni Swarasa Prayuja Madhyasti Churnam is a licorice powder, and selectively the juice of this or the paste of this Mandukaparni Centella Asiatica vegetable with the boiled milk is only given with the red rice and mung bean diet, and that becomes as a periodic bland diet for detox, while honey water is penetrated and get flushing out all the microcapillaries. So that is the way honey water detox will bring you within 24 hours. If you follow this protocol, the energy is back and restoration is back. And then that is, there are so many substances which we go through trying out, the like Benincasa hispida, Kushmanda, and then the selective seasonal fruits according to the basis of a pre-lunch, pre-diet, and fruit being recommended. And the water, how much water should be given before diet, during the meal, after the meal. After the meal, the water brings the weight gain. Before the meal, the weight loss. Then the measurements are there to give for that to maintain that. Otherwise, we'll have so many substances like the black pepper induced, or Embellia ribes, Vidanga induced, and Gugulu, Comifera mukul induced, hot water induced, Shadangapaniya, Musta, Parpata, Kushira, Chandana, Udicha, Nagarai, Shrutashita, Jalamje, and Pipasa, Jvarashante. So, based on the conditions of the ill health or based on the condition of the wellness, and we have to select the substance, accordingly give 1 day, 3 day, or maximum 7 days. And that is the periodic day-to-day based detox required for seasonal based recommendations. And then seasonal based recommendations on the hot, cold to the dampness, as I explained, then 6 levels, say 6 times a year if it is a tropical belt. Otherwise, we have a lunar calendar being taken as the Ekadashi or 11th day, what it is being given as a Upavasa. So selectively everything is from Ayurveda entered into a tradition, our culture. In Karnataka, we can see where I was working as a principal in Koppa, and we used to see a lot of traditional richness of the food. This tambuli from the Vandelaga is being prepared over there, and we have rich traditional meals which are being, as a detox foods are being followed. So that is what Ayurveda detox understood extensively. Some of the examples what I am giving over here, and that each thing has a significant patya or channelizing, probing kind of the dietary recommendations for the proper detox, as explained. Indian gooseberry, Emblica officinalis, and which is an important fruit as an antioxidant property, and which is rich with the 5 tastes. Among the 6 tastes is a kind of combinations, because based on the intensity of the taste, sarvarasabhyaso balakaranam ekarasabhyaso durbalakaranam, so that understanding the taste richness into the sweet, sour, and salt, spice, and bitter, astringent, these are 3 divisions. So sweet everybody likes, but then sweet and sour as a combinations are recommended at large being cooked. And as you mentioned, that what is the proportion of the cooked food, what is the proportion of the raw material we take, everything is proportionate. Over 2/3 is the cooked food, less 1/3 is the raw material, raw foods or salads or the green stuff or this uncooked food. And based on the sweet and sour based predominance is over 2/3, and then salt and spice next follows to trigger the digestion to the metabolic pathways, and finally very least quantity of the bitterness and astringent is being added. And in our culture, in our traditions, we can see the astringent buttermilk is the last consumption what we take, and everything is there as a sequence for a detox process from the Ayurveda into the traditions. But everything has a means of immune modulation as well. If you go to the temple, having a panchamritam is also a kind of a incompatible combination for the yogurt, ghee, and cow's milk, and honey, and all these banana and sugars, and this mixture of panchamrita is also from the cow's products, which are incompatible. But then small quantity of the incompatibility raises the biggest immune modulation according to Ayurveda. So small poisons are the nectar like Ayurveda, and the biggest rich foods which are being more tasty will be more poisonous for Ayurveda. Say too much of sweet alone eating is bad. And based on that, we have so many recommendations. I cannot give everything what it is being shown here due to the shortness of the time. I cannot take much time as well. So we understand that what is the wrong. I mean, like whatever the methodology you follow, as previous doctor was talking about, say that you are feeling cold, extremities are getting cold, and then feeling cold, extremities are cold. These are very simple things to assess the kind of that detox did not work well because your vata is increased. And overnight, if you see the dark circles raised in your eyes, and that is indication that your energies are not coping out whatever the procedure you followed. That means you need good nourishment rather than the detox. And then based on the color, complexion, swara, varna, indriya, bala, all these measurements are being given. So the visual strength, visual acuity, and the color and complexion, dryness of the skin, to the dark circles and then any dark patches over the skin, and all the fragility of the nails or the flip of the nail, hurting at the nail skin, or any sort of measurements, the cracks over the heel, and so many measurements are there to see this voice and then the speech is getting melodious or not, or being having a hoary or freaky, or the kind of the voice is gone, is also a early sign to understand that the process is a dysfunction. So understanding the indigestion process and bloatedness, and all understanding the elimination, whether it is foul smelly, sticky stools, and so many things are there, and to see the things are not getting better because these are the parameters qualitatively being assessed for whether it is the properly detoxed or not. And that is what intermittent fasting in Ayurveda. It may be extensive and it is much more, but then due to the restraints time period, I would like to stop here and then invite if any questions over there.
Thank you, sir. We are open for the questions. Any delegates, if you have any questions, please unmute yourself and ask questions, or you can post them on the chat box too. Sir, there are no questions, I guess. Since this is the lunch time, sir, probably. We'll wait for a minute, sir, for the questions. Sir, there's a question here. Are there any particular food items we should stick on to while on intermittent fasting?
red rice, as it is mentioned here, somebody, because red rice from Spain, red rice from France, red rice from different countries. What we do with our students, we give an experimentation, say, if the red rice takes long to cook, if the red rice turns to be more sweeter, if the red rice starts to be more gluey and sticky when it is being prepared, and it's the best rice ever, because the preserve the all the B complex vitamins to and then to the richness of the proteins present with the hand pound red rice is considered to be the most balanced restorative grain from monocotyledonous to support from added dicotyledonous for all essential amino acids as a priority as channelizing probing food according to Ayurveda. By consuming this, believe me, if you have the red rice just only being cooked and you have a cow's ghee, just red rice and cow's ghee, have a bland diet a whole day, and you see the energy next 24 hours. And that is the diet which will bring you instant energies. And that is what the balance. So there are so many substances in Ayurveda as a combinations being given. Yes, intermittent fasting is always the fruits of seasonal origin and to the proportions before the meal is recommended in Ayurveda. Before the meal, like a half an hour before the meal, whatever the portion of the seasonal fruits you are able to eat, all the sweet seasonal fruits, and that will be the most important for intermittent fasting according to Ayurveda.
Anybody from the audience, do you want to ask any questions to sir? So they're asking you what is meant by annuloma.
Anulomana is, anu means paschat, later on. Lomana is to have a motility down. And later on is the sense that later on, the gut connectivity, whether it is the liver, pancreas, and as well as exocrine to the endocrine system, as I mentioned, systemic like heart, lungs, large intestine, cecum, ileocecal junction, and kidneys. These are the visceral organs which are their pH levels or the warmthness is controlled or influenced onto the gut functions. Then say that how these they are responding for the process of detox. That means the inflammatory process is being reduced, malabsorption syndrome is being controlled, or the leaky gut syndrome is being repaired, and there are also many anti-inflammatory functions in this Mirabolan nut, haritaki or Terminalia chebula has a wonderful benefit. And for the children, we just make this a little bit of paste and give it with the butter, and you see that just alone this nut is capable of controlling all the digestive dysfunctions since from the pediatric uses.
What is Langanam, sir? There's a question.
Langanam is to bring lightness in the body. So Chatush Prakara Samshuddhi said that all the interventions, Upavasa is just one among. You mean like you need to have a good sun-induced holiday for you. You need to have a wonderful trekking mountainous where the prana is rich for you, or we need to have a proper exercise. The exercise is also recommended. The recommended is like when you do exercise early in the morning on empty stomach, the forehead and the tip of the nose and upper lip, this is the area all the sweating takes place, all the fuming of the hotness into your sensory brain, and that is the 50% of your spending your individual energies. That is stop. Enough is enough for you. Otherwise, going to the midnight gyms or evening gyms after eating gyms or marathon runnings, they will just drain out your energies. That is not bringing lightness. So that is everything is a preciseness in Ayurveda, and then individually tailored how much it is required. And Yusha is the kind of the recipe prepared from the dicotyledonous legumes and as a soup-based, liquid-based diets, and which are used monocotyledonous, dicotyledonous, and the proportion of the dicotyledonous is increased in the Yusha, or being Kruta Yusha. Kruta Yusha is by the spices and the tadaka is being used or not, and the medicated ghee like the black pepper, cumin, saffetida is roasted in the ghee. So many different things are there. Yes.
Sir, there's a question. Do you recommend any particular type of yoga or exercise with intermittent fasting, or can one perform any yoga?
Yoga and exercises, yoga is always applicable as a means of day-to-day based, which is increasing, like pranayama. Pranayama is, that is what the exercise which is beginning to help increase your lung capacity, and that is where the maximum oxygen, the exchange takes place, and that is the biggest control ever anybody would do. And Rutu Haritaki is a seasonal. Sindhu, Utta, Sharkara, Shunti, Kana, Madhu, Gudanvitai. Starting from the summer season, the Himalayan pink salt to the jaggery, to the honey and pipali, and all these individual supportive adjuvants as an adjuvant for this Indian Haritaki terminale chebila is being administered in a given proper dosages as a proper detox, seasonal detox. It's a whole seasonal detox based on that one fruit in Ayurveda, which is among Triphala. So Sindhu, Sindhutta, Sharkara means the Sharkara is a mishri or the brown candy sugar, and then the honey in the springtime, and in the winter time is whole ginger as Shunti. So every season has every adjuvant which boosts up for burning out the fat and being given in a prescribed dosage on empty stomach with warm water, and a seasonal detox from this. Just one fruit is explained in Ayurveda.
There's a question asking, can you please give the Indian vernacular names for plants or nuts that you said?
The plants, Indian vernacular names are, as I mentioned, like Kushmanda is, Burda Gumadaka, we say like a Benincasa hispida, and that is the Medya Rasayana, Balya Rasayana, Brahmana, the juices of this Benincasa hispida is being given as a shots like 50 to 60 ml on empty stomach in the morning for all these kind of systemic flushing and yes, pumpkins. Ashgard. That is one other thing. Yes. And then the Vandelaga I mentioned, Central Asiatic as a vegetable source. And we have asparagus vegetable which is available. We have dill vegetable which is available. And we have rhubarb vegetable which is used for detox process in the West. And what it is being used as a kokum, Garcinia indica, for weight loss. That is another thing, kokum. So the Garcinia. So we have dry and wet and fresh kokum fruits, which is specifically used for the burning of the fat. And so many things are there. And guarfali, which is having lots of gums in it, resinous substances for the diabetic people to have this intermittent fasting. So the dietetics in Ayurveda is huge for health and in disease. Very specific conditions, very specific ingredients based on the grains, based on the vegetables, based on the fruits, everything is recommended. So we have to have these combinations to take up, and some of the things like Lavanardraka Bhakshanam, Sada, Patyam, Bhojana, Gray, when you say the generalized principles are different. So fresh ginger and fresh Himalayan pink salt in different solvents. The solvents is we use olive oil, coconut oil, sesame oil, and mustard oil, and then the Nigella oil, pumpkin oil. So these are different fatty acids for omega-369, and then chiturated, well blend in a coffee blender as a microfine particles of the ginger and Himalayan pink salt is the first recommended for restoration of the gut functions as a detox supplement being used with the bland diet. So there are certain principles to say how rejuvenation takes place with the simple one or the two recommended substances being used as Medya Rasayanam, Hrudya Rasayanam, Hrudya, Medya, or Balya or Rasayana rejuvenation. That is a huge chapter. The Rasayana with the Shatavari, Rasayana with the Ashwagandha, Rasayana with the Amalaki, Rasayana with the Guruji, Rasayana with the Arjuna. All these rasayanas are meant for a periodic cleansing detox, technically being used and becomes as a food medicine to the medicinal simple ingredient portions. Amalaki is a wonderful thing, as a Nishamalaki is another combination with the fresh turmeric and fresh Indian gooseberries being given for a first line diabetic conditions as just only one thing, but then you have dissolving in different mustard oil or sesame oil or coconut oil proportions will give you. So fruits during intermittent fasting, exclusively say Ekabhukta Mahayogi, you say that it is not that exclusively you can make your stomach conducive to one kind of the food, stereotypic foods. It is not possible. You have to train yourself, as gradually said, what is that amount of the fruits before lunch you take, and then gradually people like yogis, they just live on the fruit, or they just have this dairy. Somebody was asking dairy is a vegetarian or not. All the essence in the life is the vegetarian. The essence from the cow is the milk, which is used for the life of the calf and supported by. And recently in Chennai, somebody has a heart transplant with the cow's heart is being transplanted, and she survived. So the cow is much holy, and all its products are holy for the health restoration, for the best detox, starting from the cow's ghee and then to the cow's milk and so many things. So it's not exclusively one thing. And vegan is not that concept Ayurveda accept it. So we have all sorts of vegetarian foods as a prioritized. And if it comes to the non-vegetarian, as Dr. Pratapji was talking, but then say it's a selective, because we never get those kind of the wild forest animals anymore. It's a cultured meat is not acceptable in Ayurveda at all. And if somebody is from the Rajasthan, like Salman Khan was imprisoned, then if you are getting the black buck, that is the Tridosha Shamana meat, ever Ayurveda mentioned about. A grade meat coming from the black buck. And that is the kind of the deer from the desert land. So Ayurveda grades it. What is A grade? What is B grade? So what for it is? For the balancing or for rejuvenating? And say, for example, like the wild boar, then you need to improve their weight. And then the deer, reduce your weight. So similarly, wild fowl, to maintain that standards of that weight. It's not that chicken, what it is, cultured meat is no good anymore. And that is not the meat consumption in Ayurveda. It should be wilder meats. And all the animals and birds coming from desert lands are acceptable in Ayurveda. Now, land and water is negative. All the waterlogged areas in UK, even the venison, the kind of the deer what we get is negative, because it is a water marshy land. UK is completely marshy land, and it's not a desert land like Rajasthan. And otherwise it's a mixed land like a tropical belts. So there are so many meat qualities explained in Ayurveda based on this wilderness, and they should be used. Like the Rohitamasya, Rohita lebio among all the fishes is the priority, and wildfowl among all the birds is the priority, like that. We get here partridge and then the quail. These are the two birds what we recommend for the people who are non-vegetarian here in the supermarkets, what we can get from the wilderness. Otherwise, not all this cultured meat is good for health.
There's one more question, sir. Which non-caloric beverages can be taken while intermittent fasting?
The beverages which are in Ayurveda are more known under the Asava and Aristas. Asava and Aristams, there's huge range of Asava and Aristams are there. Arjuna Aristam, Dashamula Aristam, Abhaya Aristam, Amalakadya Aristam. So any Asava Aristas in different combinations, the fermentation process is restore back the gut microbiome, gut microbiota. And that is the reason why fermented foods are recommended in a way. In Ayurveda, say, we have quinoa prakriya, and as well as the shandaki preparations, or the yogurt based cooked preparations. They are all much used for the fermentation process. For example, the barley, red rice, sesame paste, mustard paste, sesame oil, Himalayan pink salt, yogurt, jaggery, and these are the combinations. When we cook this barley rice and then ferment it with the yogurt with the sweet and sour based, and that will become as a culture restored for the gut health in Ayurveda for a detox process. So fermentation process. So for sweet and sour, for example, you have pomegranates. Pomegranates is good for the cardiovascular system. Emilica officinalis is good for all rejuvenating all the systems. So all the sweet and sour fruits. So among the Indian gooseberries, amla, and pomegranates. Then the next things will come, like as I mentioned, like Feronia elephantana, like capita or this wood apple, and as well as kokum, and as well as Garcinia based, and then the rhubarb based, and as well as the Vrukshamla is the tamarind based. So what are the sweet and sour fruits which are available? Then all the 5 type of salts available in Ayurveda: sea salt to Himalayan pink salt to the black salt to the crystalline salt of, and then they are the weaker and stronger plant salts as well. They are mixed. So group of salts, group of sweet and sour fruits, and then the dried and fresh, and then the jaggery in between to conjunct them, and being used in the fatty acid like different oil medias, and that becomes as a detox supplement into the Ayurveda for the gut restoration. Yeah, 6 tastes which are sweet, sour, salt, spice, bitter, astringent. The proportion sweet and sour is highest range, and then the salt and spice is intermediate range to connect it, and the bitter and astringent is a weaker range, because we are reversing things. We are taking all the bitter and astringent fresh salads and fresh vegetables, uncooked raw, and then a lot of fiber, but then we are neglecting the taste sweet and sour being cooked, and that is the reason why our gut functions are not being restored. So having a salads and then the coffee, and that is not a good breakfast, and fruit juices alone as a detox diets will never restore the gut functions, because it's a missing link for the sweet and sour being cooked from the grains and pulses being used selectively in Ayurveda. That's the art and culture tradition of our dal preparations or food preparations in our natural day-to-day at home in our Indian cultures. So tamarind and jaggery, that becomes as a backbone for the combinations, because the jaggery and tamarind say in Ayurveda everything is 1 year old. 1 year old. The golden tamarind is not, it's negative to the point of acidity inducing. Once it turns into black, that's the reason after the delivery, if you see, and they just go and search for this old tamarind from the earthen pots, our nannies. And that is what, because the old tamarind, minimum 1 year old, will become more therapeutically viable when it is combined with the minimum 1 year old jaggery. The jaggery also, what we use here is Caryota urens, Kitul jaggery, coming from Sri Lanka and India also it does grow. The palm jaggery. The palm date jaggery is better than the sugarcane jaggery. The best healing sugars, which are more simplified. And these combinations of the tamarind and Kitul jaggery, when we make, and then the combinations like the fresh ginger and Himalayan pink salt will take over as a salt and spice with the sweet and sour, and then any recipe will be get balanced with the black bone energy for metabolic restorations. So that's the key based on the taste. What are the substances we take to make? It will be a nice chutney. You can blend it with the tamarind and jaggery, old tamarind, and then to the fresh ginger and Himalayan pink salt and other condiments go around with the oil-based chutney preparations. That will be the most suitable, because oil-based, fatty acid-based is a support for all the digestive to metabolic restoration in Ayurveda, without which it will be inadequate. There are 4 sources: looking from the plant sources, looking from the dairy sources, looking from the meat sources, and looking from the bone marrow sources. That is where we consider the highest level of support where it is coming from. So that is from the goats, for example, when the goat bone marrow paya prepared, and it becomes the richest spice mix restorative food for Ayurveda. And similarly, the lamb become negative. So there are so many things to learn, what is good, what is bad, what is A grade, what is Z grade in Ayurveda.
Thank you so much, sir. I don't think there are any more questions now. Thank you so much for your valuable session, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir.
Namaste.
Thank you, sir.
Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you, sir.
Namaste.
Now let's have a lunch break now. We'll all meet after lunch break. At 2:30 p.m. will be our next session. Thank you all.